Finally, we... Yeah, who's the king now, you little turd? Who's the king now? I'll see you in hell. Okay, well, if you haven't guessed yet, this is the Game of Thrones episode that finally, we saw Joffrey meet with a very, very painful death. Or at the very least, it looked painful. But oddly enough, that wasn't the only memorable part of the episode. You think after building this kid up as the ultimate jerk throughout the series, you would think that nothing else in the episode would compare, but actually it does. This episode started off pretty well. Unfortunately, it did suffer some flaws in that it did serve as kind of partially a reintroduction and partially kind of picking up some story threads that it set up last time. So I think that comes from the fundamental problem that this show has of trying to balance all of these characters and storylines, is that you inevitably can't fit them all into one episode, or at least not very easily. So we got some characters that we haven't seen since season 3, like Theon Greyjoy, who, that was a depressing scene. Jeez. Okay, so the guy who stabbed Robb Stark in the gut, Bolton, I think his name is. He has a illegitimate son named Ramsay. If I'm getting any names wrong, then forgive me. I'm a Lord of the Rings fanatic. I'm by no means a Game of Thrones aficionado. But back in season 3, Ramsay had tortured Theon Greyjoy to the point of insanity, to the point where he was literally begging for death. He had basically taken away what made him human. He had tortured him beyond the point of disfigurement. So to see Theon as this guy's servant going by the name Reek was just very sad. And when he learned that Robb Stark had died or had been killed, I have to give credit to Alfie Allen, because he really, toward the beginning of the show, he really pulled off the pompous jerk pretty well, and here it doesn't even seem like the same character. You really feel very saddened by the fact that this guy's humanity has basically been driven out of him by the, I don't even know how long it was. I'm gonna go weeks to months of torture, relentless torture, being chained up in this dungeon, learning that Robb Stark is dead, that the war is basically over, is, wow. That was, if they screwed up that moment, then the whole ordeal would have been lessened, at least in terms of its intensity. But Alfie Allen plays that very well. I was actually pretty impressed at how subtle he was in conveying how sad a position that Theon is in, or Reek as he now goes by. Oh man, that was a depressing opening. But we finally got to see what happened to Theon. We got to see what happened after his torture. So I honestly think this could have been a plot line in the first episode of season 4. But like I said, there are just so many characters that they inevitably had to leave some for this episode. Bran is back. Bran Stark or Bland Stark, whatever you prefer. I'm sorry. I don't blame the kid. I don't blame the kid and his performance. I blame the way that the character is written and what he is given to deal with this time around. Because Bran Stark, from the very beginning, has been completely disconnected from anything going on in regards to the war and in regards to more interesting characters. And in season 3, they introduced this power that he had. I believe they called it being a warg, another concept they stole from Lord of the Rings. Where he could see through the eyes of his direwolf. Although I'm pretty sure Game of Thrones came before Aragon, and even if it didn't, this concept is really nothing new. But I can appreciate the need to, or the desire to, try and make Bran more interesting and try and set up a part that he could potentially play in a future conflict. And I really liked what they were insinuating, where he might become more animalistic in the future. I mean, he honestly, truly believed that he could sustain himself by seeing through the eyes of his direwolf as his direwolf ate raw meat. And the guys who introduced him to the concept are like, no, you can't do that. You have to eat you physically, and you also cannot spend too much time in the body of your animal, because you will lose who you are. And that idea can potentially lead to some interesting stuff for Bran, especially given the complete lack of interest I've displayed towards him up to this point. It still would help if he was a little more involved in the central conflict, but hey, we can't have everything, right? From the beginning, I've just felt Bran could be exercised from this show and make more time for characters we like. But I know there are a lot of people out there who like him, so I guess I'll stop harping on the subject. They handle his scenes fine, or his one scene fine, and like I said, it does set up some interesting concepts. Never really comes back again in this episode, but it does, like I said, it does set up some potentially interesting stuff later in the season. But the real events, once again, were happening in the capital. The real drama, Tyrion sending Shay away. And like I said, I basically knew where this was going. Not because I've read the books. I haven't read the books. And I haven't read any, I try to stay away from all the online articles or the online wikis dedicated to Game of Thrones. There's a wiki for everything nowadays, but I digress. I knew what they were going to do, but I will give them some credit, because A, it actually makes sense that Tyrion would want to send Shay away, not because he doesn't love her or anything, but because it is genuinely dangerous for her in King's Landing, since some spy chick found out about the affair that they were having, and considering his father said he would hang the next whore that he found in Tyrion's room. So Tyrion, with every fiber of his being, does not want to do this, but he feels like he has to, and you can tell that he really wants to go to great lengths to ensure Shay's safety. But this actually brings me back to Season 2. Season 2 ended with Tyrion getting injured in the battle, in the siege, and Shay offered to go away with him to some foreign islands, where they could, in theory, live happily ever after together. And Tyrion did not take that up, because he claims that he likes staying at King's Landing and being smarter than everyone else. We haven't really seen any indication of that. We haven't really seen any indication of him having any sort of advantage over those around him, especially not with his daddy running things now. So this whole thing where Tyrion sent Shay away and did not go with her, which would have actually given truth to the earlier promise that she tried to make in Season 2, I thought was a little contrived, but it is well acted by Peter Dinklage. That is another credit I will give. That scene is very well acted, and they do not forget about her in this episode, and something tells me that we are not done with Shay, because she's basically a series regular at this point, or at least a strong supporting character. So I doubt that they would just kind of send her away without any kind of second thought. They've done that with very minor bit part characters, like Cersei's daughters, but it's just I just don't think they would do that with someone as relatively significant as Shay. But more interesting than that was Jaime Lannister, and Jaime Lannister I've really grown to like over the course of season 3, and the fact that he now feels completely inadequate in terms of being a member of the King's Guard. He wants to stay in the King's Guard because he feels that it's really the only thing he has left. His honor is completely out the window. He doesn't want to rule Casterly Rock. He just wants to fight. It's all he's known how to do. But seeing him actually being at a loss of how to go about that was very interesting. And once again, we get a scene between him and Peter Dinklage, which reestablishes that yes, these two brothers love each other. That used to be Jaime's only redeeming quality, is that he loved his brother. And to see them kind of try to, I don't want to say rekindle, but like I said before, reestablish, and Tyrion being very willing to help his brother, and not really seeing his lost hand as any kind of serious life-changing event. I mean, obviously it is life-changing, but for Tyrion, who has had to deal with feelings of inadequacy his whole life, I think knows what Jaime is going through, and it felt very genuine, and it felt very believable when Tyrion said, "Look, my bodyguard Bronn can train you in the use of a sword, so Jaime can hopefully train with his left hand, because he is obviously left-handed now." So that again sets up some interesting stuff, and it is one of the few plot lines that they carried over from the last episode. But the big highlight, or one more thing, it was also pretty. Honestly, this was one of the less intriguing plot lines nowadays, because up until this point they haven't really given Stannis Baratheon much to do after he got beat in the siege. They haven't really given him any material to work with other than I feel sorry for myself and I am slowly becoming more and more dependent on the witch. Now, that could be interesting, but I don't really think they take full advantage of it. I don't really think that they show his downfall in a way that's gradual enough for us as the audience to relate and identify with. I don't really think... And again, part of that has to do with the overall structure of the show, which is they can't spend too much time on one character. If you're lucky, you get one scene per show, or one scene per episode with your favorite character, and then the character's gone. If he's really lucky, then he'll get 2 scenes. But Stannis, this doesn't really have to do with Stephen Delaney's acting. Stephen Delane is a fine actor, but he's given relatively little to work with in comparison to how prominent he was in season 2. Because, like I said, Stannis does really kind of feel sorry for himself, and they don't really spend as much time as perhaps is needed on his downfall and his increased dependency on the witch, on Melisandre. I think that's how you say her name. But one thing that could prove kind of intriguing is how Stannis' family might become more dependent on Melisandre. The only sane person there is Davos, or you know who I mean. I think it's the Liam Cunningham character. So the only sane one there is Stannis' former friends, who continuously says, "Don't trust the witch, don't trust the witch," and Stannis is like, I can trust her. I'm in charge here. But if they go with a subplot that Stannis' family continues to seek advice and seek help from from the witch. That could be interesting. That could enable them to spend more time on this set of characters, because they kind of set that up. They kind of set up Melisandre corrupting Stannis' daughter, who has a facial disfigurement, kind of like you know what she looks like? She looks like Christina from Frankenstein Created Woman. So I don't know if they're setting it up that maybe being disfigured, she might seek the guidance of Melisandre, since her father is basically completely absent from her life, except for occasional visits. I don't know, that could be potentially interesting, but the big scene, the real scene that I think many people will associate this particular episode with, is finally killing off Joffrey, the character who has basically every single person who watches this show must have a death wish for Joffrey, and that death wish was finally fulfilled. Now they have to find someone else to hate. Lena Headey is pretty easy to hate in this show. Her character, anyway. I'm not saying hate on Lena Headey, the actress. Hate on Cersei, the character. But actually, no. I want to emphasize that hate on Cersei. She needs to die next, because she is boring. She is so. They try to make her interesting, but she is boring. She is two-dimensional. She comes off as two-dimensional most of the time. And just how snooty and cruel she is. They try to give her depth, but she just doesn't have. You don't get the sense that she has as much dimension to her, or as much audience interest to her than as her dad, Tywin, or even remotely close to the levels that Peter Dinklage has. But the wedding, Joffrey completely making a fool of himself, asserting his authority, partially to convince those around him, and also to convince himself, because I think even he knows that he really doesn't measure up to a lot of other kings. So that might be some type of way of proving it to himself, like, oh yeah, I'm king. What am I talking about? Why am I doubting myself? I can do this. I can subjugate these people. I can pour wine on my uncle's head. Which they were really milking the cruelty of this character throughout this scene, and I think that was their way of giving him a send-off, because he was basically at his nastiest in a long time during this wedding scene. He was mistreating all the guests. He was saying, as this jester was trying to entertain him, he's like, I'll give you, I don't know, 15 gold pieces to whoever can knock the hat off my fool. He like I said, he poured wine on top of Peter Dinklage's head, and that was a good moment right there when Sansa actually picked up the goblet and handed it to Tyrion. And it's about time that they gave her something to do, but also I really liked the little subtle character moment that they had where she's actually kind of starting to like and respect Tyrion. Not nearly on the level of not taking the opportunity to get out of there if she had the chance, but she tolerates him, and like I said, the point where she handed him the goblet was a real subtle moment, and I think what was conveyed there is that, hey, these two are both completely mistreated in this city. So there was a little moment of, hey, we're kindred spirits. I mean, they didn't hammer it in by any means. It was just a quick moment, but it was a moment that has stuck with me, and probably will continue to stick with me even after these two are probably separated. I don't know. Nothing stays the same on this show. You always have some unfortunate circumstance that drives people apart. But back to the Joffrey death scene, the scene that millions of internet of internet viewers and YouTubers are going to watch over and over and over again just to get satisfaction. Boy, I have a disturbed mind. I have a very warped sense of humor. I admit that, but to be fair, and with all due respect to Jack Gleason's performance, he sold it. Joffrey's death did look very painful, and I liked the makeup and the contacts that they put in him. At least I'm pretty sure those are contacts. The way his eyes were bulging. It looked like that scene from Total Recall, the original, where whenever someone gets on the bare surface of Mars, their eyes kind of bulge out of their head. It kind of looked like that. But yeah, Joffrey dying, that was by far the most significant event that has happened this season, and we're only on episode 2. You'd think they would save something for this for maybe mid-season or episode 9, because that's usually when all the big stuff happens in these seasons. Episode 9 and then 10 is kind of the aftermath. But the fact that they did this in the second episode really makes me wonder, what else do they have planned? And with Joffrey gone, there's a whole new realm of possibilities. It's a whole new ballgame now. The king is dead. How is this going to affect a lot of the characters? My guess is, subconsciously, they're all going to be very happy. Like, hey, the world's a better place now that King Shithead is out of the picture. Overall, this was a very solid episode, very well acted from all parts. Even the parts that I was bored with, like Lena Headey being all cruel and snooty. Still well acted by Lena Headey. Some very nice, subtle character moments. And we seem to really be moving the story forward this time around. Like I said, there were still some scenes of reintroduction, like with Theon Greyjoy and Stannis Baratheon, but it wasn't nearly to the extent that it was the last episode. And like I said, I liked the last episode, but it did really feel like a season opener, not quite up to the cinematic standards that this series is known for. But like I said, this one really gets the ball rolling. The future is fraught with possibility, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this when I say that I'm very anxious to see what happens next.